This story it's horrific. It's horrific, it's disgusting, it's sick, and it has to do with a former CNN producer and his alleged crimes in terms of child sex exploitation. But of course, because it's CNN right now, I have to differentiate, because there's two CNN producers that are going through separate cases at the exact same time right now. You got one who was working for Chris Cuomo and another one who is working for Jake Tapper. So understand, these are the two separate producers. So today's story is about the former Cuomo producer, John Griffin. And this is from FoxNews.com. The evidence against Griffin allegedly includes a drone video that he took showing a, quote, completely naked 9-year-old girl standing next to him while he was in his underwear, according to court filings. When confronted with this video during an interview by FBI agents, Griffin's first response was merely to suggest that he was not looking at the naked girl, despite that she was standing so close to him to be touching. The prosecutor's pretrial detention memo reads, "The woman's name is not being used to avoid exposing the child's identity." Now, we also know that federal investigators have seized electronics and storage devices owned by Griffin. Now there's a $15 million civil lawsuit that has been filed on behalf of this 9-year-old girl against Griffin, and more details about what was going on, presumably details that we'll find out in the coming criminal case, have now been included and released in this document. And even though I would really prefer to not have to talk about this kind of stuff, I kind of feel compelled to have to talk about this because we need to know what this CNN producer was doing. From about April 7th, 2020 to about April 13th, 2020, in the District of Vermont and elsewhere, the defendant, John Griffin, used a facility of interstate commerce, knowingly attempted to persuade, induce, entice, and coerce an individual who had not attained the age of 18 years old to engage in sexual activity for which any person could be charged with a criminal offense. He engaged in conversations over Google Hangouts with the person. He claimed that he had sexually trained girls as young as 7 years old, and he is looking for candidates that would be able to come out to essentially this chalet that he had in Vermont for what he called sexual training for underage girls. He contacted them over Google Hangout. He used different websites to be able to reach out to them. And he said, "One of the biggest lies in this society is that women are delicate, innocent angels, and that in actuality, naturally, they are the dirtiest possible in every metric. When handled appropriately, a woman is a woman, regardless of her age. And that is why he asked the women to be brought to him to be, quote, trained properly." Now, following this conversation over Kik, as well as text and telephone communications, he used an internet payment service, Venmo, to transfer about $2,000 to cover expenses for her and her 9-year-old daughter to fly from Nevada to Boston. On or about July 15th, 2020, John Griffin drove his 2019 red Tesla Model X from Ludlow, Vermont to Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts to pick her up and her 9-year-old daughter and to bring them to his Ludlow, Vermont ski house, where the child was directed to engage in and did engage in illegal sexual activity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is some of the most horrific stuff that we would ever have to talk about in any given reporting situation. But the fact of the matter is, this was going on a year and a half ago at CNN. You have this other producer for Jake Tapper, who was apparently also involved in soliciting photos, talking to women who had underage girls. And this, it's a very similar kind of setup where he's targeting women who have underage girls. And this is, by the way, a textbook example of how pedophiles go and reach out their prey, how these predators reach out and find young girls. They're not contacting them directly, and unfortunately, what these groomers do, and we saw this, by the way, in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial when the clinical behavioral psychologist came out, she stated that they groom the parents first, and then they groom the daughters. That's what they're seeing here, and we need an independent investigation of everything at CNN to explain what's going on here.
This is Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO of Turning Point USA. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Turning Point USA.